Hey Browns fans, Nathan Zegura here with another Browns position preview brought to you by Paramount Advantage. And as has been the theme on defense, the Browns, a lot of new faces, a real influx of talent both in free agency and in the draft. And the defensive line, well, it is no exception. Defensive line coach Chris Kiffin's going to have at least 3 new starters and many new rotational pieces, many of them with big-time backgrounds and pedigrees. Let's start on the defensive line and look at the ends here. And you look at last year, it was Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon were your starters. Well, this year, your starters are going to be Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. Garrett, of course, first-team All-Pro, Pro Bowler for the second consecutive season. He had 12 sacks last year in just 14 games and was really on a tear before he was slowed down by COVID. In fact, early in the season, it really felt like Garrett was good for a sack, strip, fumble every single game. He had 4 of those on the season, third most in the NFL. Joining Garrett now will be Jadeveon Clowney on the other side. Clowney, also a former #1 overall pick, and he said upon arriving at minicamp, he's waited 8 years in the NFL to have the opportunity to play with somebody like a Myles Garrett, to find that physical counterpart, and he has done it. Clowney, a multiple-time Pro Bowler in his own right. The Browns also added in Takk McKinley. McKinley, a former first-round pick of the Atlanta Falcons, who had a couple 7-sack seasons under his belt, and last year before getting hurt, had a sack in 6 quarterback hits in the opener against the Seattle Seahawks. So this is someone with immense talent, and when I talked with Takk McKinley upon his signing, he told me, look, maybe I'd taken some things for granted. One thing that is clear, though, is that he has talent, and if he is motivated, I think he's going to be a big-time force off the edge, a real speed rusher. And think about this. I think we're going to see Garrett, Clowney, and McKinley on the field together quite a bit. Clowney, not only one of the best run-stopping defensive ends in the league, he's one of the best interior pass rushers, so you can slide him inside next to Myles and put Takk outside on the other side, or put he and Garrett both inside and ends rushing off the outside, or blitz, etc. So many options for Chris Kiffin and Joe Woods here with this defensive end room. So that's your trio that's going to see the most playing time. Behind them, though, the Browns have a lot of talent. Returning is Porter Gustin, the former 5-star recruit who was on the Browns active roster for the entire 2020 season. Didn't record a sack, but had an interception in that playoff win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. He will have competition, though, from Curtis Weaver. Remember him? The Browns claimed him after the Dolphins waived him, a 5th-round pick of the Dolphins a year ago. He is the Mountain West Conference's all-time sack leader, Boise State's all-time sack leader, and a guy who really worked hard to transform his body this offseason. He had a great showing at minicamp, and he is somebody certainly to keep an eye on in training camp. Now, some other names to know: Joe Johnson and Cameron Malveaux both spent time on the Browns active roster a year ago. An undrafted free agent rookie, Romeo McKnight from Charlotte. They will be competing to try to find their way onto this roster or onto the practice squad. So that's the look at the ends. Now let's go to the interior of this defensive line. Both starters from a year ago are gone. There are 2 new starters in: the veteran Malik Jackson, who has been a Pro Bowler and one of the guys that Joe Woods coached in Denver. He wanted to bring him in, known as a very good interior pass rusher. Joining him will be Andrew Billings, who opted out last year due to COVID. The big 330-pounder, a run-stuffing monster who had been a full-time starter for the Cincinnati Bengals before joining the Browns. Now, there's a lot of depth at defensive tackle as well. This will be a position to keep an eye on. I don't know how they're going to decide how many, who make this team, who's on the practice squad, because there's so much talent here. You know, those top 2 starters, they are veterans. Behind them, Jordan Elliott, last year's 3rd-round pick out of Missouri, and defensive line coach Chris Kiffin told me it really started to click for him around week 11 last year. And when I asked him and some members of the front office, who do you expect to take the biggest leap this year? Unanimous: Jordan Elliott. Elliott will be joined by Tommy Togiai out of Ohio State, the Browns' 4th-round pick in the draft this season. He's one of the strongest players in the draft, 40 bench press reps at 225. That's insane. He is the greatest player in the history of the state of Idaho, and he stays in Ohio, moving from the Buckeyes to the Browns. He is a force, quick one-step penetrator who wreaks havoc, and if you watched the Buckeyes and Clemson a year ago, you saw Togiai dominate that game. So those are likely your top 4, but could there be more in the mix? And the answer to that is yes. The Browns have a couple of veterans trying to make this team. Damian Square, a 9-year veteran out of Alabama, most recently with the Chargers. He finds his way onto a roster, it seems, every single year. They also have Sheldon Day, another veteran, competing to make this roster. And then there are 2 wild cards. Malik McDowell, Malik McDowell, when you see him at rookie minicamp, you say, whoa, 6'7", massive, a guy who had top 10 talent in his draft class, but he has battled off-the-field issues. He is getting a chance at redemption here with the Browns and could be, in fact, the most talented interior defensive lineman in camp. Can he keep it together? That will be a big storyline to watch. And then there's Marvin Wilson, an undrafted free agent out of Florida State. If you looked at the way too early 2021 mock drafts, a lot of them had Wilson as a first-round pick. This is a 5-star, one of the top defensive line recruits in the country coming out of high school who had some great tape. And if he came out maybe a year ago, maybe he was a first or second round pick. But some off the field stuff happened with he and his coach down there. He slides, the Browns pounce on him, giving him one of the biggest undrafted free agent contracts in the league. So you have 8 bona fide studs in this defensive tackle room. And the question is, how many can the Browns keep? That's going to be something huge to watch in training camp. It's a new look defensive line. You're likely going to have Myles and Clowney with Malik and Billings starting, and in sub packages, maybe Elliott comes in and rushes the passer. You bring McKinley out there with Clowney and Myles. So many options, so many different skill sets, so many different body types. It's going to be a lot of fun. Some people are saying, kind of reminds them of the talent that the Niners had 2 years ago when Chris Kiffin was there as the D-line coach, when that D-line wrecked the league. Hopefully the Browns can get that production up front. It is a very talented group. All right, that's been a look at the Browns defensive line. For the latest on your Browns, keep it tuned to clevelandbrowns.com and, of course, the Browns mobile app. You can watch all of our Browns position previews as well as the Browns breakdowns, where I go in the film room with Dane Brugler to look at our entire rookie class. You can do that at youtube.com/Browns. Thanks for joining us for another Browns position preview. Looking at the D-line, brought to you by Paramount Advantage.